Hi there, Elise Dewsberry here with another one of my installments of How to Get No Feedback from Elise. Today I want to talk a little bit about range and tessitura, what they mean and what the difference is between them. So starting with range, when you're writing, any singer has a range. Like they have the lowest note they can sing, the highest note they can sing, that's their range. And when you're writing songs for your musical, you have to start by deciding what range do you want your character to have. And that range will usually make them fall into the sort of larger categories of soprano, alto, tenor, bass. There are variations, but those sort of larger categories. And there are some established ranges for those vocal types that will give you the kind of sound that you're looking for, generally speaking. Now, sometimes when people are describing what those ranges are, they'll say things like, C1 to E5 or something like that. And I will admit to you that I get confused by those numbers, and I have heard people describe them differently. They'll assign, what one is to a completely different octave on the piano than other people. So I find that really confusing. So if you want to think of it a little more simply, I would recommend that when you're writing for the female voice or the treble voice, that you think about a staff in the treble clef, and that generally speaking, you're going to be keeping your singer on the staff. The notes are not going to go above or below the staff very much. For a soprano, they can go above the staff maybe a ledger line because a soprano can have a G, an A, a B. If we're in opera, they can go higher than that, but in musical theater, usually not any higher than a B. And below the staff is a little dicey for a soprano. So middle C, one ledger line below the staff is about as low as you want to go. But probably keeping them on the staff is safer. An alto, you definitely don't want to take off the top end of the staff. An alto can give you an F. It depends on what kind of sound you're looking for. Um, a real alto isn't going to be able to belt that high. People who can belt Fs and Gs, that's generally speaking not truly a belt. It's a nasal mix, and it's very popular on Broadway. So that's the certain kind of vocal style. Although someone who's giving you a strong nasal mix like that usually can't go as low as an alto who's giving you a true belt. So again, you'd want to keep them on the staff. If you're going for a true, more mature alto belt, I wouldn't take them much above in the middle of the staff, a B, maybe a C. But they can go below the staff a couple of ledger lines, maybe even 3 ledger lines below the staff. So that's for the female voice. For the male voice, in musical theater, generally speaking, we recommend that you use what we call the ottavo clef, which is the treble clef, the G clef, with a little superscript 8 on it that shows the octave that you want the male voice to be in. Yes, there is such a thing as a bass clef, and that is used in choral music and in opera, but generally speaking, in musical theater, we put our men on the ottavo clef. And when you're looking at a tenor, I wouldn't put a tenor as low on the staff as you would put a woman on the treble clef, a soprano, because I don't think you want to take a tenor off the staff at the bottom of the staff. Once they get into those lower notes, F, G, A, that's pretty low for a tenor. On the other hand, they can hang out a little bit higher than a soprano because A's and B's are very much within their wheelhouse, and potentially even a C if you've got a really high tenor. For baritones, and I'll talk about basses a little bit, but let's say baritones or barytenors, sometimes they're called. Probably not a good idea to take them off the staff, and F is about as high as you're going to want to go for them. And they can go a little below the staff, but even a full ledger line is asking a lot because then you're getting into bass territory. And musical theater tends not to have a lot of true basses, so it's probably not a good idea to get them down there. I'm trying to be very general about what it looks like on the staff. And a good rule of thumb is that if you start seeing lots of ledger lines above or below the staff, there's probably a problem with where you've placed it. And it might not sound the way you think it's going to sound. So you want to check that out because too many ledger lines, if you're using a treble clef for women and an ottavo clef for men, you shouldn't have to be using more than 1 or 2 ledger lines above or below. You start getting more than that, you want to question it. Maybe for an alto, you can get to 3 ledger lines. But now let me talk about the other side of the coin, which is tessitura. So Once you've established what the range is for your character, what is their lowest note and what is their highest note, now you have to think about tessitura. What that means is what handful of notes, what two or three notes does the song sort of live in? This applies to a song, right, as opposed to the range of a character. So, because songs have a tendency to sort of live around, they'll go lower, they'll go higher, but they tend to sort of live in a certain area of a handful of notes. That's the tessitura. Now, what you really want to be careful of is that the tessitura of the song isn't either at the very top or the very bottom of the range for your character. So if you've established, let's say that your character is a soprano who has a high A, who can go the A above the treble clef staff, the G clef staff. Okay, so that's her highest note. What you don't want to do then is write a song where the song tends to hang around F, G, A, F, G, A, F, G, A, F, G, A, and there's lots and lots of F and G's and A's. What you need to remember is that the top note of someone's range is their money notes. It's special. It's something that you want to save because it has a lot of power. But usually a singer can't just sing their top note over and over and over and over and over. That's going to really wear them out. So you want to leave a little room and put most of the song a little bit lower than the top of their range so that you can find the moment to really punch it with the top couple of notes. And generally speaking, for a soprano in musical theater, an A usually is only going to happen in a choral number when there's a whole chorus of people singing and the women on top in the four-part harmony are singing a big loud A at the very end of a number. Otherwise, it really should be used extremely sparingly in musical theater because even if you have a soprano who can sing that high, it's very hard for us to understand the words because it's hard to articulate at the top of the range. And it also gets really tough to listen to when it's that high for too long. You want to save it for those money moments. Um, Likewise, you don't want a character to be singing right at the bottom of their range. You don't want the tessitura to live right at the bottom of their range because again, those are notes that's the lowest that someone can go. It doesn't mean they can spend a whole song down there. Same thing, when you get to a tenor. Your tenor might have a really good B. That doesn't mean they're going to want to sing a song where the tessitura has them doing G, A, B, G, A, B, G, A, B, G, A, B, or even F, G, A, B all the time. You want to save that A. You want to save that B for the most important moment. So the key is the range of your character is the lowest note they can sing to the highest note they can sing. The tessitura of a song is where does the song live? And it tends to work better to have a song live in the comfortable part of your singer's range, which is neither the top nor the bottom. It's somewhere in the middle. It might be in the middle gear, shifting up a little bit towards the top, but that is where they're comfortable. Let them live there for most of the song and then pop up and pop down when it's important in the song. Pop down occasionally to get a nice melodic feel to your melody, pop up and to really, punch up your ending or the most dramatic part of the song. So that's the thing that I just really want to impress. Just because your character has a particular low note in their range and has a particular high note in their range, you want to be careful to make sure that the tessitura of the song that you're writing doesn't live in either ends of the scale. It lives in the comfortable part of your character's range and only uses the top notes and the bottom notes sparingly. So that is my lecture on the difference between range and tessitura. Thanks. Until next time, toodaloo.